Hello students, myself Dr. Varun Giri. I'm a consultant chest physician and consultant critical care physician, presently working as a senior registrar in Department of Chest Medicine, RMC Loni. I welcome you to the online lectures, and today's topic is a pleural effusion. So the definition is collection of it is an abnormal collection of fluid in the pleural space resulting from either excess fluid production or decreased absorption or both. It is the most common manifestation of pleural disease. Few other concepts are hemothorax, which is a collection of blood in the pleural space; chylothorax, which is a collection of chyle in the pleural space; empyema, which is obviously a collection of pus in the pleural space. If we see the anatomy of pleural space, the pleural space is the space between visceral and parietal pleura. The parietal pleura covers the inner surface of thorax, diaphragm, and the ribs. Visceral pleura covers the outer surface of the lung, which also includes the interlobular features. These both spaces are separated from each other. Right and left pleural space are separated from each other by the mediastinum. Normally, there is some amount of pleural fluid is always there in the pleural space, which is approximately 5 to 15 ml. It has a purpose. It serves as a lubricant to facilitate the movement of pleural surface against each other in the course of respiration. Pleural effusion itself is very rarely itself it is a disease. Otherwise, it is an indicator of some underlying disease process. That process can be local, or we can call it as a pulmonary, or it can be a systemic, to which we can call as a non-pulmonary. Although the etiologic spectrum of pleural effusion is very extensive, the causes of pleural effusion are divided as exudative and transudative. Pleural effusion can occur on single side, or it can occur on the both sides at the same time. Mechanisms, as we saw, the mechanisms which are involved in the formation of pleural fluid are because of either increased production. The increased production of fluid can occur because of reduction in the intravascular oncotic pressure, or increase in capillary permeability or vascular disruption, or it can also occur because of increased capillary hydrostatic pressure in the systemic or pulmonary circulation. It can also occur because of migration of fluid from the other cavities like abdominal cavity or CSF in case of CSF pleural leak. Decreased clearance of pleural fluid can also occur. That can be seen in cases of excessive negative pressure in the pleural space, which is because of trapped lung, or because of decreased lymphatic drainage due to their blockage in cases of malignancy or trauma. To summarize the causes of pleural effusion, the extensive list, those are grossly divided as transudative or exudative. Transudative effusions are seen in cases of congestive heart failure, cirrhosis, nephrotic syndrome, SVC obstruction, peritoneal dialysis, myxedema, then sarcoidosis, hypoalbuminemia. But these are the causes of transudative. The exudative pleural effusions have a very extensive list that can be seen in cases of various neoplasia, various infections like bacterial infection, tuberculosis, fungal, parasitic, pulmonary embolization, few GIT diseases like subphrenic abscess, pancreatic abscess, pancreatitis, or esophageal perforation, few cardiac diseases like post CABG surgery or post cardiac injury, which is called as Dressler syndrome, few gynec causes like mixed syndrome, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, endometriosis, few rheumatic causes like rheumatoid pleuritis, SLE, drug-induced lupus, Sjogren's syndrome, Streiff syndrome. Few drugs, dasatinib, nitrofurantoin, dantrolene, and methotrexate, they can also lead to pleural effusion. And obviously few miscellaneous causes like asbestos exposure, post-lung transplant, then drowning, then acute ARDS, then iatrogenic pleural effusions, and not to miss hemothorax and chylothorax. Clinical symptoms, patient will come with the two types of clinical symptoms. One can be because of the mechanical effect of collection of fluid. That can be breathlessness, which will be exertional in type; chest pain, which will typically pleuritic type, which will more on deep breathing, more on coughing, yawning, and relieved by pressure. Patient can also have cough, which will be predominantly dry type. If productive cough is there, then we should suspect some other cause as our simultaneous parenchymal involvement. The other type of symptoms are due to etiology, like increasing lower extremity edema, dependent pedal edema, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, orthopnea. These symptoms will direct us towards some cardiac reason. Night sweats, fever, hemoptysis, weight loss, they should suggest some chronic infective pathology or malignancy, like infective pathology like tuberculosis or malignancy. Hemoptysis raises the possibility of malignancy by giving us directions towards endobronchial or endotracheal lesion, or it can also be the sign of pulmonary infarct. An acute febrile episode, purulent sputum production, and pleuritic chest pain, it can occur in cases of effusions associated with pneumonia, to which we call parapneumonic effusion. Then clean on examination, on inspection, we'll get typical findings of decreased respiratory movement, shift of trachea to opposite side, bulging of ipsilateral hemithorax. On palpation, we may get tenderness, maybe because of refracture, or maybe the fluid is getting converted to empyema. We'll get decreased tactile local parameters whenever there is a fluid collection. On percussion, there is a dull note which is typically called as stony dull note. On auscultation, we'll get decrease in amplitude of breath sounds. Sometimes we may get bronchial breath sounds, which at bronchial breath sounds, they suggest the underlying collapse lung. On X-ray, the first most and the easiest and cheapest investigation is the chest X-ray. X-ray can be done in the different views and different positions. The most common is in the posterior anterior view and in the upright position. The fluid collection in the pleural space will give rise to the opacity, which will be typically meniscus-like, which will be higher at the laterally and low at the lower level in the medially. At least 175 ml of fluid is required for the CP angle blunting. The other view is supine position, anteroposterior view. Most of the patients who are critical or who are in ICU, they are very difficult to make them upright. So the commonly done X-rays in ICU are in supine position. So the fluid migrates upwards and it gives rise to homogeneous uniform opacity on one side. Though the fluid is not throughout the hemithorax, but the opacity produced by this fluid due to gravitational force is uniform hemithoracic opacity. Now, how to differentiate this opacity from the underlying pneumonia? As we know, the air bronchoca, which is the hallmark of pneumonia, that will not be present in cases of just a pleural effusion. And in cases of pleural effusion, we will be able to see the vasculature of the lung very distinctly from the uniform hemithoracic opacity. We will not be able to differentiate such a clearly about the vasculature from the opacity in cases of if any parenchymal involvement is there, like consolidation. Then lateral decubitus view. This view is done to look for the whether the fluid is free fluid is there or not, or whether the fluid is loculated. If the fluid is free, then that fluid will settle as a horizontal well-defined level due to gravitational force. If it is a loculated fluid, which is seen as a if it is a loculated fluid, then it will not give rise to such a horizontal level. The next investigation is ultrasound. It is the easiest non-invasive and not much costly investigation. Anyone can learn to do ultrasound. It helps us to know whether there is a pleural effusion or not. That is the diagnosis of pleural effusion. Even the 50 ml of fluid can be identified on ultrasound. It helps us to identify the appropriate site for the thoracocentesis, pleural biopsy or chest tube placement. It helps to identify whether the pleural fluid is loculated or not. It can also help us to quantify the amount of pleural fluid. It also helps to evaluation of underlying etiology, like whether the fluid is hemothorax or pyothorax, or whether the underlying structures have been damaged. Ultrasound can give us the fair idea about that. Then the further investigation is CT thorax. It is definitely a costly investigation, needs expertise to analyze it, and also needs need to ship the patient outside of the ward or ICU. It is effective in demonstrating the abnormalities in the lung parenchyma. It also gives good idea about bony structures, lymph nodes, mediastinal lymph nodes, which are poorly seen on conventional chest X-ray. It can also identify pleural thickening. The presence of pleural thickening suggests that the underlying fluid is likely to be exudative. It also gives reasonable information about etiological diagnosis. Then once we got the patient of pleural effusion and we have confirmed that there is some effusion, now whether should we go and do the thoracocentesis for each and every patient? It is not like that. There are few indications for the whom to undergo pleural tapping. The patients who are coming with the symptoms of pleural effusion, like they are having very much pain, they are breathless, these patients should be subjected to pleural tapping. If the pleural effusion is a new finding in the due course of the patient, then we should go and evaluate this pleural fluid, which may help us towards other etiologies. That's why the new finding of pleural effusion is an indication for thoracocentesis. And if the patient's clinical course is not fitting into typical course, and it looks like a typical course, and it is different than what we anticipate, then also we should do the thoracocentesis. Here we will not go into the details of procedure of thoracocentesis. Now the procedure is done and we got the fluid. Now we'll see the analysis of fluid. The pleural fluid is analyzed on the basis of few tests like gross examination, in which we see the color and the physical appearance of fluid. Then there are few routine tests which are biochemical and microbiological tests, and there are few special tests which are ordered in the specialized situation. Let's see the gross examination first. In gross examination, we are supposed to see the color of the fluid, character of the fluid, odor of the fluid. By looking at the color, we can get the fluid like pale yellow fluid, red fluid, whitish fluid. Red fluid can be seen in cases of benign asbestos, malignancy, benign asbestos pleural effusion, post-cardiac injury, pulmonary infarction. Whitish fluid can be seen in cases of cholesterol or chylothorax. Brownish fluid can be seen in cases of long-standing bloody effusions, rupture of amoebic liver abscess. Black colored fluid can be seen in cases of fungal infections like Aspergillus niger, Rhizopus. Yellow-green fluid can be seen in case of rheumatoid pleurisy. Dark green fluid can give us idea about biliothorax. Pale yellow is the usual appearance of fluid which can be seen in cases of transudative fluids. If the fluid is of color of enteral feed, then we should suspect the migration of enteral feeding tube into the pleural space. If the color of fluid is similar to the IV infused which we are infusing through the central venous catheter, then we should suspect whether that central venous catheter or central line has migrated to pleural space. It is a very known complication in cases of subclavian vein catheterization. Then coming to the character of the fluid, pus can be seen in case of empyema, viscous fluid can be seen in cases of mesothelioma, debris is seen in rheumatoid pleurisy, turbidity in the fluid can be because of inflammatory exudate or lipoid infusions. Anchovy paste-like infusions can be seen in cases of amoebic liver abscess. Then coming to the odor, putrid type of odor suggests that there is some anaerobic metabolism going on. And ammonia-like odor will give us clue towards whether it is a urinothorax. Then coming to the characterization, the usual course of the work of the pleural effusion is that once we get the fluid, we are supposed to characterize it, whether it is a transudative or exudative. Transudative is what? It is the effusions which result from imbalances in the hydrostatic and oncotic pressures in the chest. For example, in case of congestive cardiac failure or conditions external to pleural space, these effusions are usually caused by the pathologies which are away from pleural space or systemic pathologies, and they can be easily judged by the clinical presentation. While exudates are what? These fluids are actively secreted in the pleural space. They result primarily from the pleural or lung inflammation or from the impaired lymphatic drainage of the pleural space. That means the problem because of which the fluid is collecting is in the pleural space. It is not far away from the pleural space. So the local problems are which usually lead to exudative pleural effusions. Now coming to the Leitz criteria, these are the very age-old criteria. They are the traditional method of differentiating between transudative and exudative. And what they do, they measure the serum and pleural levels of protein and LDH. We'll see in the detail. The criteria are: the fluid is considered as exudative if any of the following is found. Ratio of pleural fluid to serum protein greater than 0.5. Ratio of pleural fluid to serum LDH greater than 0.6. Pleural fluid LDH greater than 2/3 of the upper normal limit of the serum value of LDH. If any one of above is present, then it is considered as exudative. If none of above is present, then the fluid is considered as transudative. Now, there is one fallacy of Leitz criteria. Leitz criteria are meant to identify exudative pleural effusions correctly. They are not supposed to miss any exudative fluid. But in this work, what they do, they misclassify approximately 20 to 25% of the transudative fluids as exudative. And this happens in cases of patients who are on prolonged diuretics or who are fluid depleted. So there are few additional criteria which are serum and pleural fluid protein concentration. If the difference between these two is less than 3.1, then the fluid is called as exudative. Serum minus pleural fluid protein concentration level of less than 3.1 gram per deciliter is called as exudative. Similarly, a gradient of serum albumin to pleural fluid albumin, if it is less than 1.2, then also fluid is called as exudative. Now coming to chemical and biochemical analysis. Let's see one by one. Pleural fluid protein, LDH and glucose. These are the routine tests. We'll see one by one. Proteins, most of the transudats have absolute total protein concentration below 3 gram per deciliter. Tuberculous pleural effusions virtually always have total protein concentrations more than 4 gram per deciliter. When the pleural fluid protein concentrations are in the range of 7 to 8 gram per deciliter, then we should suspect few rare pathologies like Waldenstrom microglobulinemia or multiple myeloma. LDH, LDH levels in the pleural fluid, they usually correlate well with the degree of pleural inflammation. The pleural fluid LDH level more than 1000 are characteristically found in cases of empyema, paragonomiasis, rheumatoid pleurisy, and sometimes observed in the malignancy. Pleural fluid secondary to pneumocystis jirovecii, they have typical characteristic. The pleural fluid to serum LDH ratio greater than 1, that is the pleural fluid protein is more than serum, pleural fluid LDH is more than serum LDH, and pleural fluid protein to serum protein ratio is less than 0.5. This is typical pattern. Usually the pleural fluid LDH and pleural fluid protein levels, they go in hand. They are increased in cases of exudative pleural effusions, but in PCP pneumonia there is some difference. There is more LDH in the pleural fluid than the pleural fluid protein compared to serum protein. Such a pattern may also be suggestive of malignancy. Urinothorax is another example. Coming to the glucose, in cases of exudative pleural effusions with a low glucose concentration, which is usually less than 60 mg per deciliter, then the differential diagnosis will be narrowed to rheumatoid pleurisy, empyema, malignant effusion, tuberculous pleurisy, lupus pleuritis, and esophageal rupture. All other exudative pleural effusions will have glucose concentration similar to that of blood glucose. Similarly, all transudative pleural effusions will have pleural fluid glucose concentration similar to blood glucose, except those which are due to migration of catheters. Mechanism of low pleural fluid glucose, it differs as per the underlying etiology. Means there are different mechanisms which will lead to low glucose levels in cases of exudative pleural effusion with low glucose concentration. Let's see few additional tests: amylase, cholesterol, triglyceride, creatinine, ADA, gram and acid fastane, bacterial and AFB culture, cytology. We'll see one by one. Amylase, it is not routinely done. An exudative pleural effusion with pleural fluid amylase more than serum amylase is typically seen in cases of acute pancreatitis, chronic pancreatic pleural effusion, esophageal rupture, and malignancy. Cholesterol, pleural fluid cholesterol concentration more than 45 mg per deciliter is suggestive of exudative pleural effusion. It is also one of the additional criteria to differentiate between exudative and transudative, but it is not that much validated. Usually the pleural fluid cholesterol is derived from the degeneration of the cells and vascular leakage due to increased permeability. An elevated cholesterol concentration more than 250 mg per deciliter, it defines the cholesterol effusion. It is also called as pseudochylothorax or chyliform effusion. It can develop in the patients with long-standing effusions. Triglycerides, pleural fluid triglyceride concentration greater than 110 usually supports the diagnosis of chylothorax. Levels less than 50 mg per deciliter, they exclude the chylothorax to a reasonable likelihood. Now the range in between, which is 50 to 110, it remains, and it should be followed by the lipoprotein analysis of pleural fluid. So creatinine, the pleural fluid creatinine represents the confirmatory test for urinothorax. pH, it should always be measured in the same blood gas machine. The pH of normal pleural fluid is usually a 7.6. pH below 7.30 is an abnormal. Transudative pleural effusions usually have pleural fluid pH of 7.40 to 7.55. Exudative pleural effusions majority range from 7.30 to 7.45. And the pleural fluid pH below 7.30 with a normal arterial blood pH is found in the same diagnosis associated with low pleural fluid glucose concentration and exudative pleural effusion. Like those are rheumatoid pleurisy, paragonomiasis, empyema. Paraneumonic effusion with low pleural fluid pH indicates likelihood of requirement of pleural space drainage procedure that can be either in the form of ICD or therapeutic synthesis. ADA, a very popular test, it is the most common diagnostic tool used for the tuberculosis. The usual threshold is more than 40 international unit. If the pleural, in cases of malignancy, almost 90 to 95% of the times ADA levels are less than 40 international unit. The false negative and false positive ADA results, they do occur, that is pretty common. So the ADA results should be considered in the context of other features of patient's clinical presentation. We should correlate it with the history of patient's clinical progress. Then cytology. Cytological analysis of pleural fluid can establish the diagnosis of malignant pleural effusions, but the test has very low sensitivity. Sensitivity differs with the type of underlying malignancy suspected. For example, in cases of mesothelioma, doing a pleural fluid cytology is a very good test, but it is not same capable in cases of some parenchymal malignancy. The volume of fluid sent for the cytological analysis has no correlation with the yield of the test, with the sensitivity of the test, if the fluid is more than 50 to 100. But definitely it is better to send 100 ml fluid than sending 5 to 10 ml fluid, but it is no way better to send whole 1 liter or 500 ml fluid as compared to 50 to 100 ml. Nucleated cells. Coming to the cytological analysis, nucleated cells, the total pleural fluid nucleated cell count is virtually never diagnostic. A cell count more than 50,000 are usually found in only in complicated parapneumonic effusions, including empyema. Exudative effusions from bacterial pneumonia, acute pancreatitis, and lupus pleuritis, they usually have cell counts above the 10,000 per microliter. Chronic exudates typified the tuberculous pleurisy and malignancy, they typically have nucleated cell counts less than 10,000. The nature of the cells, or the type of nucleated cell is usually related to time of thoracocentesis in relation to acute pleural injury. The early the cellular response, the pleural injury, the early cellular response to the pleural injury is usually neutrophilic, and as the time passes, if the pleural injury is not ongoing, then the predominant cell type shifts towards mononuclear predominant. Lymphocytosis, lymphocyte count representing 80 to 85 to 95% of the total nucleated cells is usually seen in cases of tuberculous pleurisy, lymphoma, sarcoidosis, chronic rheumatoid pleurisy, yellow nail syndrome, and chylothorax. Malignant pleural effusions will be the lymphocytic predominant in over the half of the cases. However, the percentage will not be that much high. It will be around 50 to 70%. Drug-induced pleural effusions that are because of dasatinib are lymphocytic predominant. Eosinophilia, pleural fluid eosinophilia more than 10% occurs with both malignancy and benign etiologies of pleural effusions. Etiologies like pneumothorax, hemothorax, pulmonary infarction, parasitic infections, fungal infection, drugs, catamenial pneumothorax, tuberculous pleurisy, parapneumonic effusion, and chronic eosinophilic pneumonia. Mesothelial cells, they are usually found in very small number in pleural fluid, but the major clinical significance of mesothelial cells is, in case of exudate, is that their absence is more important. The TB is unlikely if there are more than 5% of mesothelial cells are there. If those are absent, then we should suspect the tuberculosis. Basophils, these are distinctly uncommon. Greater than 5% is common with pneumothorax, pneumonia, and transudates. Counts greater than 10% are most commonly seen in cases of hematological malignancies. Plasma cells, presence of numerous plasma cells should suspect multiple myeloma. RBCs, pleural fluid RBC count between 5,000 to 1 lakh is of little diagnostic significance. If the fluid is grossly bloody, we can assume that the RBC count in the pleural fluid is more than 1 lakh. If the hematocrit of pleural fluid is more than 50% of the peripheral blood hematocrit, then it is called as hemothorax. This is the other definition of hemothorax. Presence of bloody pleural effusions suggests very few possibilities. First is malignancy, second is trauma, third is pulmonary embolization, and least but not the least is tuberculosis. Coming to the microbiological test, pleural fluid from the patients with undiagnosed exudative pleural effusions should be cultured for bacteria, both anaerobically and aerobically, also for mycobacteria and fungi. For aerobic or anaerobic bacterial cultures, the pleural fluid should be inoculated directly into the blood culture media at the bedside only. It increases the sensitivity of culture. For TB, use of Bactec system with bedside inoculation, it provides higher yields. The ideal method of culture is AFB MGIT. Coming to the PCR based test, PCR on pleural fluid has been less sensitive than the PCR on other specimens, possibly due to possibacillary nature of pleural fluid and possibly due to a matter in which DNA is extracted. PCR has also been tried in case of pleural biopsy, but the results have not been that much promising. Approach to the patient. Up till now we saw many of the tests, at least 10-15 tests on the pleural fluid. Those are having different differential diagnosis, and many of the effusions can produce both transudative and exudative. So to reach towards a definite diagnosis, we should follow a algorithm. So let's see that. If any patient comes with the abnormal chest x-ray and we are suspecting some pleural disease, and if there is no obvious if there is a blunting of CPI angle, then it is obvious that there is a pleural effusion. If there is no blunting of CPI angle, then pleural effusion is unlikely. Now, if the blunting of CPI angle is there, then if we do lateral decubitus chest X-ray, chest CT, or chest ultrasound to further confirm the nature of free nature of fluid, amount of fluid, and location of fluid, which will give us idea about if the fluid thickness is more than 10 mm on chest X-ray, then it is safe to go for pleural tapping. If it is not more than 10 mm, then we should observe. Now, if it is more than 10 mm and with all aseptic precaution and all ruling out all contraindications, we did thoracocentesis, we got the fluid, and at the first step is suggested, we applied the Leitz criteria, which are pleural fluid to serum protein more than 0.5, pleural fluid to serum LDH more than 0.6, pleural fluid LDH more than 2/3 of the normal upper limit of your lab. If any one of these criteria is present, then the fluid will be called as probable exudate. If none of that is present, then we should consider it as a transudative. Then if it is a transudative, then we should search for the causes of transudative effusion, and at the same time treat for the congestive cardiac failure, liver cirrhosis, or nephrotic syndrome. Now, if the Leitz criteria are positive and we got the fluid as a probable exudate, still almost 20 to 25% of transudative pleural effusions are misclassified as exudative by Leitz criteria. For that, we have to apply two additional criteria. Prior to that, if the probable exudate is there, then if check if the patient's history suggests of congestive cardiac failure, if patient's history suggests of cirrhosis. If that is so, then apply serum to pleural fluid protein gradient. If that is more than 3.1, then it will be called as exudative. If that is not more than 3.1, then again we should consider as a transudative pleural effusion. If patient has no history of congestive cardiac failure and no history of liver cirrhosis, then this fluid is likely to be exudative, and then look for the further tests like appearance of pleural fluid, glucose in pleural fluid, cytology, and differential cell count on the pleural fluid. Also the microbiological test to see for the infection like bacterial or tuberculosis. This is the algorithm. If we follow this algorithm, it is very high chance that we'll reach towards the diagnosis and will be successful in treating pleural effusion. Thank you for patient listening. I hope you are following all the rules and suggestions for the social distancing. We'll all come through it. So thank you. Stay home, stay safe.